Maxim, tell me how to manage the balance of importance in a relationship. You know, there's this myth that you have to find the golden mean in a relationship, 50-50, and then there will be happiness. If you follow this logic, the man must control every action, well, almost every word. After all, the balance of importance can be affected by anything. How often you write, how often you call. Moreover, I can call often, but not for long, and I can rarely, but I can talk to her for 2 hours. And what's better? And what if we started living together? Well, we don't communicate by text message. And how do you dose the initiative in such a case? What if there's a conflict? Do we always have to take turns apologizing or what? And in terms of intimacy, what should we do? One night a woman walks a man on a leash, and the second night you strictly punish her for it. Is that how it works? What if you got sick? Some kind of grief happened. How do you not lose your rank? So you have a sore throat, a fever of 40, and you say, "Don't give me warm milk, woman, I don't feel this pain." Well, listen, each of us has had relationships that always ended according to these two scenarios. In the first case, you lost interest in the young lady and ended the relationship. In the second case, the woman fell out of love and found an excuse to leave. It's important to understand that golden mean is always a temporary phenomenon, which is finite. Can we manage it artificially? Yes. But you're only engaging what's right on the surface. That's how often I write, how often I say that I love. However, the interaction between a man and a woman contains much more information. It's a lot of everyday meta-messages, reactions that are impossible to control, impossible to manage. Remember this story. When you didn't romanticize a woman, you were cool with her. And you could allow yourself to behave as you please, even cry in her presence, complain, burden her with your problems. It would seem that you broke all the principles of balance of importance. But she loves, but she wants. And with the other young lady, you try to do everything methodically, to bind her to you as much as possible. And nothing comes out. Why is that? Well, it's simple. These imperceptible meta-messages, reactions, spontaneous emotions, together, they are much more informative. That's 80% of the information. And how often you write to her, call her, and so on, confess your love, is only about 20%, no more. So, all the tips from the internet on how to make a woman fall in love with you, they will not work without the right state. And in the right state, they may not even be necessary. That is, if we take a man who hasn't studied the mechanics of relationships at all, but at the same time he doesn't romanticize a woman, then he'll turn out with a high degree of probability to be more effective and more attractive to her than the man who has written an outline for every video, but is emotionally involved in the situation. It turns out that the main obstacle to effectiveness is the romanticization of relationships, which is embedded into each of us by default. This sacred, quivering attitude toward falling in love, that it's almost the most important thing in life to fall in love. It's not just books, movies, or fairy tales that constantly deceive us. You and I have tasted that once. Every one of us has been in love, had dopamine rolling over. Well, just remember this state. We couldn't sleep, we couldn't eat, we were essentially in a highly intoxicated state next to the woman we loved. Our subjective sense of happiness has been twisted by 400%. And if we have ever tried it once, then we are people of addiction, well, to some extent. And even if you encode and do everything to eradicate it, even then there will still be flashbacks. The worst thing is not even that, but that many people in their lives have never even resisted this feeling. If a friend came up to me and said, "Max, I'm in love," I'd be like, "What do you mean?" He'd be like, "Well, I'm in love." Wait, it's a product of his decision. You can resist this condition. Consider it destructive, wrong, false. It can sometimes be seen as a temptation. And that's where he starts screaming, "I love her." Shh, it's fine, just take it easy. Well, seriously, it's clear that none of my friends would say that. We are rather able to make a joke about it, because it all sounds a little comical. It's a mental, emotional disability. I fell in love, I can't help. It's much worse than a physical disability, because it can make a person stronger. But emotional disability is the path to the voluntary degradation of a person's personality. Well, sure. Popular psychology will tell us that you can't block your emotions. You have to leave them out completely. And others will tell us that moderation is necessary in all things. Well, that sounds great, but that's just ridiculous. It's like an addict. Instead of chaining him to a heater, we tell him, well, yes, go to the dealer, but don't take a lot of drugs. Use moderately. Okay, I don't want to judge them. These people usually have 3 or 4 divorces each as it is. The important thing to understand is this, that all the pain you've endured in a relationship has to do with the fact that for you the concepts of romanticization and love are identical. You know what the most insidious scenario is? When romanticization is unobvious and dormant. It's like a chronic illness. We can forget that we have it, but as soon as our immune system goes down, it comes right out. That's what they often come to counseling with. You met a woman, your feelings were moderate. Why were they moderate? Because romanticization is impossible with full-fledged, full-blown reciprocity on the part of the woman. And that's the only reason you ended up in a strong position. That is, not because you're a principled badass, but because a woman gave you the opportunity to feel like a master. You became one for a while. Basically, you were in control by happy coincidence. It's a set of circumstances. The woman wanted it that way. Why would she want to, you may ask? Well, because woman wants to fall in love. You fit a number of parameters, and then she just started to idealize you to the extreme. This was her doing, not yours. Afterwards, you felt like you were the master of the situation, that's it. But one day, you will be moved from there, because the inner state doesn't correspond to this position. Once a woman loses her interest a little, provokes a conflict, creates tension, and that's it. The man will get emotionally involved and, of course, make mistakes. So there is no need to focus on the first few years of the relationship. It's a freebie. Again, the woman herself wanted to fall in love, and then there's just the inertia of idealization, which forgives a lot. But one day it will come to an end. A woman's hormonal love will dry up. And then what to do? Imagine this. She gets pregnant or there is a child together. That would completely change the rules of the game. It changes the relation of moral forces in the relationship. You're already helping her, protecting her, financially supporting her, and all of a sudden she causes a conflict or wants to leave after a scandal. What do? Nothing. You're going to suffer. Maybe cry. After all you can rely on at this minute is your understanding of the mechanics of a relationship, experience, and cold reasoning. It's at this minute that your tendency to romanticize comes out, or rather its downside. The withdrawal, the panic, the anxiety, and the transition into obsession. So, knowledge about the balance of importance, practical knowledge I mean, not something that's published on the internet, can really help a man. How? To manipulate a woman for years? No. We've already discussed that. That's not viable. This knowledge can help you to take a dominating position so that you internally begin to correspond to it. I had such a case in my life. I didn't have a lot of experience back then. After 3-4 dates with a girl, I felt that I was starting to get very emotionally involved. That happens when a woman's psychotype, appearance, or temperament, manner of communication strongly attracts you. You feel like that's your thing, yeah? After that, I realized that I was losing control. At first, I tried to drown out my inner anxiety by saying that I would see her more often or for longer. Then I said to myself, stop. You know where this is going, stop it. Next, I just waited for the moment when it was appropriate to start such a prophylactic mini-ignore. The girl then made up with me. It was noticeable that it stirred her emotions so much. And after that, I didn't just feel like I was in control. I was fully that already. I behaved super literate and convincing. Even I can say that from my current perspective, it kind of surprises me. But the explanation is just that I got into this position and started to conform to it, you see? It turns out that state is primary, not knowledge. But knowledge is necessary in order to feel that very state and fix it. In order to get rid of the inner romanticization of relationships and to find the right state of mind, it's necessary, of course, to take a practice. Many men, I noticed, had a certain inner contradiction. And how am I supposed to be the master and in control if I concentrate every time on what I do, how I write, how I call, how I answer? It turns out I bear down, try, blush, puff out my cheeks to get a woman to like me. And even if I can do it, I've put in a lot more than she has. She doesn't stress at all and enjoys it. So that's the point. Practice is one story. And when you have found this inner state, it's something else entirely. Then everything turns out by itself. Sometimes you can even break the rules, and the result is still positive. And there's another way. It's not so rosy. When a man, instead of practicing, begins to nurture himself with all sorts of information. And the majority of it is just gibberish outright. When a person writes me that I have read many books on this subject, I know it's bad, because there is not a single good one. Accordingly, I ask him, okay, do you understand a lot already? He goes, yeah, I sense this female manipulation so they can break me now. And I'm like, I see, but who's breaking you? I'm just afraid to ask. He goes, well, a tyrant woman won't beat me now. And I'm like, are you in some troubled relationship or something? He goes, no, I'm not. And I'm like, who's breaking you? He's like, I mean, I have this core now, so I won't be a cockhold. I'm an epiphany man in this aspect. And I'm like, okay, what did you learn? What can you do? He goes, what do you mean? I told you, I sense. And I'm like, I get it. Look, how convenient. Well, then I know how to play football very well. I mean, basically, when I watch TV, I think that in some moments, specific episodes, I would have played better than Messi. As long as I don't go out on the football field. Well, who's going to dissuade me from that? I can, and that's it. I want to, and I will. That's why, but you know, I can't wish that perspective to anyone. That's why there's a link to the site in the first attached comment, Online Dating Master Course. If you're already in a difficult situation for yourself and you need a clue to orient yourself and get into that right state, and this is the only mechanism for obtaining the final result. If anything, there's a number, make an appointment. See you all soon.